Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Jobin, and you are listening to Time to Talk, a podcast for caregivers. This podcast is dedicated to helping family caregivers in Ontario. Through expert tips and resources, you will gain knowledge and validation for the ups and downs that come with caregiving. More importantly, you'll learn that you're not alone. It's so important to take this time for yourself. We're glad you're here. Today, we are joined by Nicole Renaud. Nicole is a mother of 5 through both birth and adoption. She has parenting experience with Tourette syndrome, learning disabilities, cognitive delays, ADHD, SPD, NAS, PANS, PANDAS, mental health challenges, developmental delays, and complex trauma. Nicole has a degree in psychology and family and social relations and has dedicated much of her time to supporting the needs of children and their families. Nicole, thank you so much for being here with us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited and honored to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you about this, and I appreciate your experience and expertise, and I know our listeners will as well. We wanted to create a space here where Ontario caregivers could connect and share, and hopefully through our conversation today, we can all gain a little more insight into the special role and responsibility of a caregiver, as well as give caregivers themselves resources for help. So let's talk about your situation just as a bit of an introduction. When did you first become a caregiver? Because we often want to sort of separate the role of being a parent, and then there's also the role of being a parent that is a caregiver. So when did you first become a caregiver?
I guess we became a caregiver in the sense that we adopted our children. They joined our family in 2012 and in 2014. And then our family grew again in 2015 when we welcomed our youngest daughter. Our caregiving experience and roles have really evolved over the last decade that we've been parenting our boys, who are amazing, but also sometimes it can be very complex. So I would say that we became a caregiver to them when we first welcomed them into our home in 2012. But what that looks like and how that appears and the needs of our children have definitely evolved over time.
And that makes total sense because as children grow, things change and evolve, and that only makes sense in this situation as well. What do you think the biggest challenge is for caregivers and parents caring for children with complex needs?
I think the top 3 would be self-care is a huge thing. And that's really something that I've really just come to in the last few years myself, the acknowledgement that I matter and I need to take care of myself in order to be taking care of my children. And there's an incredible need in our community, my community locally and throughout Ontario, for respite services for families who are parenting children that have complex needs and diagnoses, and the acknowledgement that we do need to take time and we do need that village. And I feel very thankful that our village is very strong in family and friends and professionals that support my husband and I and all of our children. But not everyone is so fortunate. So how can we support caregivers in building up that village around them? I guess the next thing would be is talking about being okay with things are really hard and things are very difficult. When we first adopted, no one really said to us, hey, this is going to be incredibly hard. I mean, maybe they did and I wasn't listening and I wasn't open to that. And maybe that's just my own ignorance, but there was nowhere for me to turn to as an adoptive parent. I'm a little in over my head right now. I'm not sure who to ask for help. I could reach out to our family, who is amazing and wonderful. But sometimes if you don't have that trauma-informed lens and that adoption experience, the advice that you might get might be a little bit different than someone who has that lived experience. So really, encouraging families to say, hey, I need help. And I think when we talk about families that adopted, talking about things with them like post-adoption depression and helping them know that there is, such a diagnosis, sometimes labeling things for families is really important. And then I guess for myself, the other thing that I would be really passionate about is educating the greater community, often schools, medical professionals, even extracurricular activities, helping them to really understand that our kids are amazing, but they're also complex, and really helping to move the shift from people seeing our children's quote unquote behaviors and moving from behaviors to sometimes these are our kids and their diagnoses, and setting reasonable expectations for our children, I think would be the top 3.
Are there some techniques or resources that you have turned to during your caregiving experience that have worked for you?
Sure. So I feel like I've taken all the classes, I've taken all of the trainings, I've, read every book out there, but I feel like I've really developed and evolved over time. And part of it's been connecting with people who are also parenting children with complex needs to understand what works well for them and what works well for their family, and taking a little bit of, what works for family A and what works for family B, and then bringing that into our own family. And my husband and I have definitely kind of journeyed together to come to a place of, we might not always agree on parenting our children, but like really hearing each other's feelings and really taking a step back and trying to take time to really see how best we can meet our children's needs. And sometimes for me, I need to tap out and we're a tag team, and, he's going to take on whatever chaos we have going on in the moment. It's just really immersing myself in the knowledge and then implementing that in my own parenting style. I would say I'm definitely a different parent now than I was 10 years ago and even 15 years ago when we welcomed my oldest into our family. But it's been something that's evolved. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. And I feel like for a long time, I was really striving to be that perfect parent. I feel like often, and I know our community feels this as well, there's a lot of pressure on us because we've adopted our children to be perfect parents when, we're really setting unrealistic expectations. And I would say just, being open to what kind of life throws at us, and learning from all those around us, whether it be peer supports or professionals that are involved in supporting our family.
If you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed in your caregiving journey, you're not alone. The Ontario Caregiver Organization collaborates with caregivers, healthcare providers, and other organizations to provide support and resources to caregivers across the province, because caregivers need support too. By providing one point of access to information, caregivers can get everything they need to be successful in their role. Our goal is to decrease caregiver burnout and improve the caregiving experience. Learn more about us at ontariocaregiver.ca. So let's talk about your family specifically. It's a wonderful blend of 2 biological children and 3 children through adoption. Am I correct?
That is correct. So my oldest is our daughter from my first marriage. And then we always thought that we would adopt. It was kind of always on our landscape, my husband and I. We have a number of family members who were adopted in the past. So it's always been something that's been kind of in our hearts and very passionate, myself especially, that we wanted to pursue that. And so we just thought that, we would build our family, we would have biological children, and then pursue fostering and hopefully adopt through fostering. Life had other plans for us, and we've really struggled a lot with infertility and reoccurring pregnancy loss. So we decided a year after we got married that for us, we really wanted to have a family. And we decided to put having a baby on hold, and we started to pursue public adoption. So we took pride and we did our home study. And then about 9 months later, we welcomed home our older 2 boys. So my oldest son, he was legally available for adoption. And at the time he was what's called a Crown Ward. So we could go through the adoption process with him. My middle son, he was only 6 weeks old. So he was not yet available to adopt. So we were approached to ask if we'd be willing to do what's called foster with a view placement. And initially we had said no way back when we were doing our home study. It was too risky for us. We weren't really sure if it was something that I thought that I could navigate well. But after a lot of consideration, it's something that we decided that, okay, after knowing our children's story and knowing the circumstances, that the likelihood of my middle son returning to his first family or even to a kinship placement was low. So we decided to go ahead and move forward with the placement. So we met them on a September day, and I remember the call like it was yesterday. It's kind of, I like to liken it to, I remember where I was when my water broke for my oldest and my youngest, and I was sitting folding laundry on a Friday afternoon, and I was so excited. I feel like I didn't take note. I had this plan when the call would come, what I'd be doing and take notes, but I feel like I didn't even ask their names until the end of the conversation. And I called my husband and he said, okay, well, like, what about this and what about that? And I said, I don't know. I forgot to ask. I was just so excited that we'd finally kind of got this call that we'd been waiting for. And then we met our children. It was September 29th. I remember the day. And then they moved in with us forever on October 15th. So those are kind of some milestones that our family still to this day recognizes. And in our community of adoptive families. Some families are able to celebrate those days as milestones. My children were young when they came home, so it is something that we acknowledge. But for some families and for some children, it can be a triggering event. So it's very unique, and not to say, that there's one way to celebrate or acknowledge the day, but for our family, it is something that we definitely still celebrate. Then we had a whole 10 days after finalizing my 2 boys' adoptions when CIS reached out to say their first mom was expecting again. Are we willing to parent this baby we didn't have a due date? So we're kind of on pins and needles waiting to see. And we knew that the plan was for my son to come into care right from the hospital. So I said, yes, absolutely. Our goal is that if his first mom can't continue to care for him and no one in his first family is able to provide a kinship care placement for him, that we would absolutely want to care for him. So my youngest son is almost 8. And again, we went on the Foster with the View roller coaster, which I'd said after we got off of it, I said, I'm never going back on it. But we did. And it was, there's some ups and downs and some navigating how things work in the process, but we were able to legally adopt him. So he is now almost 8. And then when he was about 9 months old, we found out that I was actually expecting again. So now we have a daughter who is 6.5. So our family is life's taken us on this journey that we never really imagined. We're also waiting parents again, hoping to adopt. So we've been approved for the last few years, and we're really excited about the potential of growing our family again through adoption. It is a little bit, the phone rings and you wonder, like, is this the call? Like, my life could change with this phone call. And waiting's really hard. But the other side of that is we're really happy to know that there isn't the need for adoptive families like there was in the past, and that kids can remain home with their first families. But we do know that when the call happens and when we end up with a placement, we're very excited about that. And so is our children are very excited, and our extended family too.
I love the way your face lights up when you talk about your kids. It's really lovely to watch. People at home that are listening right now can't see that, but I can. So I can definitely say that it's absolutely wonderful. But you've also touched on some of the challenges that are inherent in the process. And I also wanted to ask you, what are some of the unique challenges that adoptive caregiving parents experience?
I think just the first is the acknowledgement that our children are complex, and our children are amazing, and they're funny, and they're smart, and they're wonderful, and they're kind, but they are complex. And it is difficult to be parenting them sometimes. And I think it's really important that people have a place to go and a place to say, like, hey, I'm really struggling today. And I know for myself, I think back to the days when, going through our adoptions, and my husband could always tell when CIS was coming for a visit, because I would be cleaning the inside of the cupboards or, scrubbing the stove. And he would say, Nick, like, they're not going to look in the stove. But there was almost this pressure that I had to be this perfect parent. And again, right, there's no such thing as that. But just even from the beginning, when we talk about being on adoption probation, which is what new families are placed on when they're going through the process of an adoption, to me, I thought, oh, probation, like job probation. I know what that means. If I don't do a good job, I'm not, after 90 days, I'm not going to be around anymore. So there was almost this fear in me that I needed to make sure that and that's not the case at all, but I guess the terminology, and we talk often in our community about how words are important and words matter. So for me, I think that really set the expectation of, I was really scared and I didn't know who to ask for help. I think when we talk about school is another one, and it's tiring sometimes, the need for constant advocacy. And I'm sure that's common across any group of caregivers, but it's the need for advocacy and not just advocacy, but intense, constant advocacy is really ongoing. We're so fortunate. My children's school has been so wonderful and amazing, but that varies across Ontario by school board. It varies by location. It varies even from school to school and administration to administration and teacher to teacher. So, we're all, our community is passionate about having trauma-informed classrooms and really helping educators to see our kids. And I'm very thankful that there's so many supports in place for children, but it can be very hard to access them. And I feel like I'm often, fighting an uphill battle sometimes, and it's hard. And I joined Adopt for Life as a parent because I had cried myself to sleep like one too many nights. Like, this is just so hard. And it's so hard, but it's so amazing too. And I guess like feeling that guilt when we talk about some of the things that are really hard about caring for complex needs children is like the guilt and the shame sometimes that we feel. And just, I think about even getting to school sometimes can be difficult. It's like, okay, this one has to leave at this time, so he's not bugging this one. And I know to some degree a lot of parents experience that, but I think when we're talking about children with complex needs, it's just more intense and it's more constant. And there's no end sometimes. It's hard, right? You wake up and you're have to be making sure that everything's set, and there's so much that goes into getting ready and getting out the door. And I have some jealousy because I see my neighbors and their kids just kind of walk to the car, but my kids are fighting and screaming, or my kids are awesome, don't get me wrong, but it's difficult. So I would say just like the day to day can be hard and difficult.
What are some ways that you might suggest that parents can help their children cope with developmental trauma? Because I know this is something that you have either professional or personal experience with.
Absolutely. I think acknowledging, the hard thing for us sometimes in our community, and even with myself, is that I know my child's experienced trauma, but I will never know what that trauma is. I will never know what those triggers are, and I will never be able to say for certain that I'm doing the right thing and taking the right actions. And I feel like sometimes there's a lot of self-doubt in my own parenting journey and in our community of adoptive families, because we're always wondering, am I doing the right thing? Am I accessing the right service? And sometimes I feel like, what if I do this, what's going to happen next? And I always have to be kind of thinking ahead. So really recognizing trauma, I think is huge, and that's a great first step. But then also following that up with, we might not know what that trauma is, and we often talk about being a behavioral detective and trying to figure out, is this a behavior, is this a need? And that's definitely something that we struggle with in our family too, is what do I have to do as a parent to correct my child's behavior? What's, as a result of their needs or their diagnoses, or what's a result of trauma? And there's no, like in parenting, there's no playbook, there's no dictionary. It's just a lot of hard work and doing the best with the information that we have. I think getting professional support is absolutely essential, both for your children and for yourself. I know for me, I've, gone across the country, and my kids have seen doctors throughout Canada to make sure that they're getting the most support for their needs and their diagnoses. But when it comes to myself, I literally kind of went to the, around the corner, who's the closest person that's going to be able to support me, just because it's different, but it shouldn't be. So really taking the time for that self-care and the acknowledgement that our children need professional supports, but so do we as parents.
Why is positive language and advocacy in the community and the school so important?
I think it really sets a tone and helps everyone understand our kids on a very deep level. A lot of our children live with needs or disabilities that are not visual, right? A lot of our children, if we talk about a child that lives with FASD, there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of, false information out there. There's a lot of preconceived notions about what a child that lives with FASD would have facial features or their behaviors. So I think it's important that we talk about setting reasonable expectations of our children. And then we also use positive language so that our children feel that they're heard and that they're validated. And I think the other thing that's really important is that our children feel represented in the community, and that they know that it's okay for them to talk about themselves, talk about their needs, and talk about their diagnoses, so that they feel that they belong. I think for a lot of our kids, that place in society, I guess, as you will, or even within peer groups, is really important. Positive language is just something we're all learning. And I've had my, foot in my mouth a few times with not positive language. And I feel like sometimes I'm trying to think this through before you're, form the right words. And I think being open as a community to saying, okay, I shouldn't have said that, or I could phrase this differently, is really important. And I think about what I learned on this kind of 12-year journey that we've been on, and I've come a long way. But I think really being open to openness within your adoption journey that continuous learning is really important, and positive language is definitely one of those.
Over a third of caregivers use their personal finances and savings to pay for the needs of the person they care for. Financial hardships are common when it comes to being a caregiver. Luckily, there is financial support for caregivers through government agencies and community organizations. As a caregiver, you may be eligible for caregiver benefits and leave. The Ontario Caregiver Organization has made a list of financial support and grants. Visit ontariocaregiver.ca for more information. Now, back to our episode.
So earlier you mentioned how you joined Adopt for Life, and that was important for you. Can you tell us what Adopt for Life is and what they do?
Adopt for Life is a community of families who are touched by adoption, kinship, and customary care here in Ontario. I work for Adopt for Life as the program coordinator and also as a regional parent liaison, so connecting one-on-one with families. It is a place for families to come together to get services and supports, education, information, and just really, I think for me, the biggest thing is a sense of community and really a sense of I'm not alone in this journey. And for me, I opened up Facebook when I first joined and like scrolling and like, oh, okay, I'm not the only person that's had to walk through this. And I'm not the only person who's, experiencing this with school. And I think oftentimes the hard thing is that we can't change the circumstances of families. And we offer support groups. We offer buddy and mentor matches for families. We have ongoing webinars. We have weekly snack and chats. And then we offer one-on-one peer supports. We can offer advocacy for families. Our goal is always to empower families to advocate for themselves, but we certainly will sit with families and advocate in any meeting or in any capacity that they need, whether it's attending meetings virtually or writing a letter of support for services or therapies. It's really just a place where I guess I feel like I'm not alone. And for me, it's been really impactful.
How can caregivers who are interested in Adopt for Life become part of this community?
So we have two options for people to join Adopt for Life, our community. We have a community of professionals where we're working with them to share information and resources and newsletters. So they would fill out that they are a professional looking for resources. And then we also have an option for families to join us. So they would fill out an intake form on our website. And then from there, our team lead would be in connection with them to set them up with their regional parent liaison. And Adopt for Life has regional parent liaisons throughout Ontario to really connect with people who are geographically close. There's no cost or services for any of our supports. We're funded by the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services here in Ontario. So someone would just go to adopt4life.com and fill out our Join Us form.
Just to sum up today, if someone is considering adopting a child that might have complex needs or is in that situation right now where they have adopted a child that has complex needs, is there anything, just in sort of some parting thoughts for them or any advice that you give to them?
I think being aware of and acknowledging that this journey is going to be difficult, but as difficult as it is, it's going to be amazing and wonderful. Being open to hearing from others that have kind of been on this journey before you and really putting aside any preconceived ideas of what family might look like. Often families come to adoption after a journey with infertility. And it's really important that families come to adoption with their eyes wide open and being realistic of, this isn't about you. It's really about the needs of the children. It's really about the needs of the child that's placed with you. And just knowing that there is a community and a place for you to get support and that you don't have to kind of struggle or limp along on your own. You can come to Adopt for Life for help. We will be there for you and walk with you. But I think just being open to hearing stories, whether it's from professionals that work, that are trauma informed and adoption competent, read all the books. Nothing can really prepare you for what it's like. I think about myself, 10 years ago, and I thought I knew all the things. I was already a parent. So how much different could this possibly be? I had really no idea what the journey life is going to be and how exciting and difficult, and really kind of tap into the community and support. Know what supports are available, be aware of the resources in your own community, and learn about openness, being open. We talk about being open-hearted in the adoption world. Openness is so wonderful. Hear about, stories of first voice adoptees, really connecting with the voice of past adoptees to see what their experience is like. And just being open to that continual growth, I think is what advice I would give. And I'm taking that advice myself, even still trying to, continue to grow and learn and do better and be the best mom that I can be. And some days I'm, some days are better than others, but I know that I'm trying my best and my children are trying their best, and that's enough.
Nicole, thank you so much for being on the show and speaking with us and sharing your experience today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. You can access more details about support services on our website, ontariocaregiver.ca. Until next time, I'm Michelle Jobin, and you have been listening to Time to Talk, a podcast for caregivers. We hope you have a wonderful day.